Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 271. We're talking NFL free agency again. This is part two of our free agency analysis. Joined once again by Jacob Kamenker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing good. I've been in my house for 4 straight days. I've been outside, so hanging tough, doing what we can, and NFL free agency is keeping me going, and all the draft stuff coming up. So I'm happy to be here tonight, hanging out with some friends.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I've been stuck in the house too, but it doesn't feel any different than the normal because I work on the website and I almost never leave the house anyway. I'm kind of worn out because my wife and I have been doing these workout videos downstairs because the gym's closed, and my back almost gave out earlier, so I don't know. I was almost not able to record this video, so kind of lucky to be here. So a lot has happened since we last spoke a week ago. There have been some trades, some major players signing. A couple of things happened today, actually, mostly with the Panthers. So to start off with the Panthers, they signed Robbie Anderson, 2 years, $20 million, and then they released Cam Newton after signing Philip Walker. So where do you want to start with this? Like what do you think? What do you think of the Panthers' moves?
I'm kind of lukewarm on them in general. I guess I'll start with the quarterbacks since there's most to talk about there. I like the PJ Walker signing. I kind of thought that he'd go join Matt Rule because, Rule coached him in college, and the Panthers didn't have like a set backup quarterback. They had a lot of options on their bench with Kyle Allen, Cam Newton, but Newton was going to be gone. They had a 3rd-round pick invested in Will Grier, but he was terrible last year. And now they've cut Newton, traded Allen, and it looks like Walker and Grier are going to duke it out for that number 2 spot. And it wouldn't surprise me if Walker ends up getting it because he's familiar with the system that Matt Rule has. And he looked really good in the XFL. I mean, we'll see if he can do anything similar against NFL defenses in the preseason. But I really think I think that was the best move of the bunch. I mean, cutting Cam Newton was kind of one of those things that they kind of had to do. And I'll take TJ's question from me here. Who do you think will start with the Patriots next season? Am I crazy to think Cam Newton? I think that they can afford Cam Newton. Their salary cap space is the second NFL. As of yesterday morning, they had $2.8 million to spend. Now they create more room, but they signed Brian Hoyer, and it looks like he's going to back up Jarrett Stidham, and they're going to give Stidham a chance to win the starting job. And I think they'll draft another guy with one of their mid-round picks as a developmental dude, see what happens there, and see if nothing works out, they'll try to get a quarterback in 2021 and just keep doing that until they find their next guy to take over from Brady. I know Newton looks like a logical fit as a starter there, and he would be if they had cap space, but I don't think they're after him. I'm going to be interested to see what teams are after Newton because he was on a non-guaranteed year in his contract, I think, or at least a year that the Panthers could cut him with no dead money. And they couldn't get anything for him. So that leads you to believe that teams weren't willing to pay the price for Cam as a starter, which is interesting. I think they kind of had to cut Cam, though, at this point. If no one was biting, they couldn't roster him and Teddy Bridgewater. So that's kind of like not a great move, but I mean, more than anything else, it sucks for them because they're getting no value back from a former MVP. As for the Robbie Anderson deal, that one, I didn't love it just because they already have Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, 2 solid receivers. I guess Robbie Anderson will be the 3rd guy there, and either Moore or Samuel will play in the slot. But giving him like $10 million a year, even for 2 years, is a little bit too much just because Anderson has had some off-field issues. But again, he's reuniting with Rule too because Rule coached him at Temple. So I guess Matt Rule's just getting the gang back together. But, overall, I'm kind of lukewarm on everything that they did.
Yeah, I like the Walker move for sure. I watched some XFL. I played XFL DraftKings, and I should say we are sponsored by DraftKings too. You can go to DraftKings.com, enter in promo code WalterFootball. This one word WalterFootball for a bonus at the first deposit. And also please hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. That'll help us a lot. Philip Walker looked very good in the XFL. He was the best quarterback. He was the MVP there. I was pretty impressed with him. And watching him, I was like, this guy can play in the NFL at least as a backup. So I think he's definitely going to beat out Will Grier. Will Grier was terrible last year. And as you pointed out, Walker knows the system. So he has a head start and he's more talented. So I like the move. The Cam Newton release, we all saw it coming because they couldn't find a trade partner for him. He's too expensive and he's too injury prone. So no one was going to trade for him, especially when the Panthers signed Bridgewater already. They already lost their leverage. So no one is going to give anything for him. So it is interesting to see who's going to sign him. You make some good points about the Patriots cap situation. And I don't even think Bill Belichick would want him as, just as a personality trait. I think he's a little, too cocky for Belichick's taste. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see Belichick making the move. I think the Chargers make sense. They need a big name to fill the stadium. They're going to have a new stadium next year. So they need to sell tickets. The Jaguars, they traded Nick Foles. They freed up some money that way. I think they'd rather lose for Trevor Lawrence. But if they think highly of Cam Newton, I can see them signing him. And I also pointed out on the site that if Newton's willing to take a backup job for a year or two, I think going to the Steelers makes a lot of sense because Ben Roethlisberger, he always seems to be injured. We don't know if he's going to be 100%. We don't know how long he's going to play. He's discussed retirement before. Like, maybe he pulls an Andrew Luck and retires this summer. Like, who knows? So I think Cam Newton going to the Steelers makes a lot of sense to me too. And with Robbie Anderson, I completely agree. It was a very mediocre signing. Like, he knows the system, which is fine, but you're going to pay a third receiver on the team 2 years, $20 million, just a lot of money. So I don't like it. Kenny says maybe Belichick doesn't want Cam, but does Jake want Patriots? Here's the question: do you want the Patriots to sign Cam?
So I love Cam as a human being. I lived in Charlotte for a while, and he was obviously great for the community there. I guess I'd say I would want him, but I'd rather draft a quarterback at this point. I think it's going to be tough for a quarterback already in the league that's not a young, unproven player to replace Brady. It's going to be too hard for someone like Cam to do that unless he was fully healthy, which we're not totally sure of. I really like the fit you mentioned with the Steelers. I think that backup job is really going to appeal to either one of Newton or Winston, because the Chargers' starting job is the only one that's hypothetically open right now. And they've said that they want Tyrod Taylor to be the starter, which, if that's the plan, that's not a good one. And I like Tyrod Taylor as much as the next guy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was a big fan of him when he was in Buffalo. But like you said, they need a big name. And if they go to LA with Tyrod Taylor as their starter, even if they take a first-round quarterback and let him sit a year, that's going to be a disaster. So I think Newton to the Chargers and Jameis to the Steelers would make the most sense, because Winston could train for a year, improve his accuracy, and eventually take over for Roethlisberger. Newton could use that starting job to rebuild his value, go to a quarterback needy team if the Chargers take someone. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those two guys, though, because the quarterback market really dried up quick, and those two guys not being signed is kind of a surprise at this point.
Yeah, it's weird because, I would say Newton's more talented than some of the guys who signed or have been traded. Like Nick Foles is, he won a Super Bowl, and all apologies to Kenny here, but Nicky Franchise is not as good as Cam Newton if Newton is remotely healthy. So I'd rather have Newton if I'm the Bears, but they traded for Foles, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I think the Packers are another spot that could be open. Aaron Rodgers is kind of in his final years. I know he said he wants to play into his 40s, but he hasn't been the same quarterback. I could see him being frustrated, not being the same, and then eventually retiring in a year or two. So the Packers are looking for Kenny says Foles is better than Brady.
Disrespect from Kenny, my goodness.
Well, he was for one game and one game only, and that's it. But yeah, so I think the Packers are a team that makes sense too. So they definitely have some options, but I mean, what you said is correct. Like, there aren't that many logical starting spots for them. Maybe the Jaguars too, but they seem to like Minshew and they want to lose for Lawrence. And then TJ says, I think that Jaguars, Chargers, Raiders, Redskins, and Lions losing out for Lawrence. I don't think the Lions, because Patricia is kind of on the hot seat there. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think the Redskins either, because they like Haskins. So I don't think, and then the Raiders definitely not. I think the Raiders can maybe make the playoffs this year as a wild card. They have a lot of talent. And then the Chargers, I think they draft a quarterback. So I think the Jaguars are the team that's going to, lose for Lawrence. And I would have said the Panthers as well, but they signed Bridgewater. So they're kind of, that's not the case anymore. We had a couple questions before we move on. Spy Nick Danger says, any thoughts on the Niners signing former Browns Chargers receiver Travis Benjamin? Does this affect the draft strategy?
No, this shouldn't affect their draft strategy. I think this is just kind of a flyer on a speed guy. If I remember correctly, is Marques Goodwin still there, or did they cut him or trade him?
I think he's still there. I haven't heard him get cut yet. So okay. I think they lost Sanders at least.
Right, they lost. Okay, they do still have Goodwin. I know there had been some buzz about Goodwin being gone and Sanders being gone. So adding a veteran receiver who's a good deep threat, never a bad thing if it's on the cheap. But I still think with 2 first-round picks, they could easily take one of the top receivers in this class, and it's deep at receiver, and they could use some extra help for Jimmy G. But, the Benjamin signing, good upside. That's how I see it.
Well, if they liked CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy at 13, they're not suddenly not going to be like, oh, we don't need those guys because we have Travis Benjamin. It's not going to affect the draft status. And I saw some, I can't remember who it was on Twitter. They said today that the 49ers signed role player Travis Benjamin. And I'm thinking, like, what role is he going to play? Is this role to drop passes and to make mistakes with special teams? So that's like what he did for the Chargers. So I really don't like Benjamin. As someone who bet on the Chargers and lost money betting on the Chargers, I can recall Benjamin making a lot of mistakes, a lot of drops. One specific time was actually he made 2 big mistakes against the Patriots a couple years ago. The Chargers, I believe, were like 6-point underdogs. And they ended up losing by 7 or 8 points. And Benjamin dropped a key pass in that game, and he also made a big gaffe on special teams that gave the Patriots an easy touchdown. So I have a lot of hate for Travis Benjamin, if you can tell. All right, a couple of other things. Who's the top receiver you would draft this year? Very quickly, I would say it's Jeudy. What do you think?
I think it's Jeudy, but I think you might get Calvin Ridley, to where people overthink the position a little too much. Judy's like a great route runner, maybe not as good of an athlete as Henry Ruggs, maybe not as big and strong as CeeDee Lamb, but I think he's going to be the best receiver of the bunch. But I think there's a chance he might not be the top one taken either. So that's going to be interesting to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know one team likes Ruggs more than the other 2 guys. So I think it's kind of like it's the eye of the beholder, really. Like it really depends on what teams want, how they scout the players. So yeah. All right, let's get to some of the trades that happened. So the most recent one, we'll go like reverse chronologically. The most recent one that happened was Quinn Dunbar. So yesterday, the Redskins sent Quinn Dunbar to the Seahawks for a 5th-round pick in return. So what are your thoughts on this? Is trading one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL for a 5th-round pick a good strategy?
It's not a good strategy, but the Redskins were in a bad position, and I can explain to you why they did it. Doesn't make it right, but here's the deal. Dunbar had demanded a trade earlier in the offseason before, like, barely after Ron Rivera had started. Like, maybe a few weeks after that, he demanded a trade or a new contract or one of the 2. Rivera is trying to reshape the Redskins culture, and he doesn't want people who aren't bought in to the team. So this has just been kind of hanging over their heads for the last couple of months. And Dunbar has been sounding off a little bit on social media. Like someone asked, like, hey, Quentin, we need you back, basically. Like, are you going to be here this year? And he was like, nah, fam, I'm out, or something along those lines. And it was just like, okay, so this dude is totally not bought in. He's had injury issues the past couple of years, despite being excellent. I think he's missed 14 of the 32 Redskins games. I blame that on the previous training staff. He had like a nerve issue in his leg in 2018. That training staff was terrible. Just read up on Trent Williams' situation where he had like cancer on his head and they misdiagnosed it. Pretty bad stuff from there. So I think like if he gets healthy and can play 16 games, he could be worth like as much as a 2nd-round pick, maybe more. But because the Redskins had lost leverage, Ron Rivera just wanted to get like the malcontents out of the locker room right now. And like the value was killed a little bit by the fact that he's on a 1-year deal and he's so injury prone. That's why they got a 5th round pick. They should have gotten more for him. Like the ceiling of his value is a 2nd round pick. I thought they'd get a 4th round pick given all the stuff surrounding him. So like coming in a round short of that is definitely bad. I graded this trade out as a D+. Like if they'd gotten a 4th, I probably would have given them a C because like some circumstances are out of their control. But overall, this was not a good trade for the Redskins. It was one they had to make, but one that they're losing tons of value on. Meanwhile, the Seahawks got a potential number 1 corner. So they're clear winners in this trade.
Yeah, you know how you get leverage back is to not succumb to it. It's like everyone thinks, okay, they're not going to trade him or they trade him for a little bit. Then I think you just don't trade him and just hold on to him, and then eventually you might get something for him. If a team's top corner goes down, they might be more willing to give up something for him. But to go back to the original point about him asking for a trade and him wanting it to go out, if the Redskins just paid him what he wanted to, would he have stayed?
I think it's definitely possible. I think part of the problem would be like Ron Rivera may not know off the bat like how this guy's going to fit in with his system, which like understandable concern, but you know that Dunbar is talented. So you should be willing to at least try to come to a mutually beneficial solution to maybe guarantee this year of his contract and do a 2-year extension that pays him like a number 1 guy.
Yeah, no, that's true. We don't exactly know if he fits the system. I've always been someone who says the system should fit the players, and I think that's something a lot of I'd say like at least half the coaches in the NFL make a big mistake doing this. Is that they come into a team and be like, no, I'm running my system no matter what, and the players will have to adapt. Like that is a losing strategy, and coaches who do that usually get fired very quickly. It's the coaches who have success or be like come to a team and be like, okay, I'm going to adapt my system to the players I have and build it to the strengths. So if Rivera comes in and says and he sees Quinn Dunbar as his best corner by a long margin, he should be like, I want to make sure Dunbar thrives in my system, and let's pay this guy because he's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Like that's how I would approach it. But I don't know. I guess the Redskins are doing things differently. We'll see how it works out. But this strategy hasn't worked for them. I know it's a new regime. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, sort of. But I think it's a bad start for Rivera's tenure with the Redskins.
Yeah, I agree to that. I agree with that to an extent. Again, the one thing that I'm going to use to counter this is that Rivera wants to. It's less about scheme, and I think I misspoke because you do tailor talent, or you build around talent, not around scheme. You're right about that for sure. And I think Rivera's had some success doing this. I think he shipped out Dunbar because he's trying to build a culture in the Redskins locker room. And they've had like seriously poisoned culture recent seasons, especially under Jay Gruden when they had like DJ Swearinger, who was a great player, but they kept him around all year despite the fact that he'd just come out after every game and be like, yeah, the coaches were terrible today. It's like, he's got to get this like accountability, trust in the locker room. That kind of makes it weird that they haven't agreed to trade Trent Williams yet. They're holding out to get more there, but they didn't do it for Dunbar, which is bizarre to me. But I would expect that they'd move Williams at some point soon. And we'll see if Rivera's whole culture thing works. I think this is going to be more of a rebuilding year for the Skins based off what they're doing in free agency. They're building up depth, trying to see what they can have. This wasn't a good trade, but again, I think it's about building culture, and we'll see if that translates. Obviously, if the Redskins don't look good next year, that's going to be kind of a blight on the first year under Rivera, but maybe they'll play a little more together.
Yeah, I do like Rivera. I think it was a good hire. I just wonder if he could have adapted to the culture if they gave him the money. I think that goes a long way. And the Trent Williams thing that you mentioned is interesting, that they haven't kind of acquiesced to that, but yet they traded Dunbar so quickly, and it makes me wonder if they really understand how good Dunbar was. I think I was talking to Kenny about this a week ago, I was watching the Eagles. I've been rewatching the 2019 season. I'm up to week 2, but I watched the week 1 Eagles Redskins game when the Redskins were up 17-0. The Eagles ended up winning. I forget what the final score was, but they were going to cover the 10-point spread, and then Case Keenum at the last second threw a touchdown. So like the Eagles basically ended up winning by double digits. The big thing that turned that whole game around was that Quinn Dunbar got hurt in the third quarter, and suddenly, or maybe it's the end of the second quarter, Carson Wentz just started going nuts after that. He had a great game in the second half. The Redskins secondary was so much worse without Dunbar. I just wonder if the Redskins were paying attention to this and like know how good Dunbar was, because he was amazing last year.
Yeah, they should know how good Dunbar is. They had him on like an unreal value because they extended him. I think instead of re-signing Bayshard Breeland in 2018, they signed Dunbar to an extension to be their outside starter. So they knew they had him like on the cheap at that point in time. But who knows? Maybe this new regime doesn't exactly know what he's capable of. And I think to your point, like if they had just offered him like a reasonable extension, even if they're like, hey, you've been injured a lot like these few years, but like, let's get you like a Bradley Roby type deal for like a couple years. Like we'll fully guarantee this year. We'll pay you $12 million the next 2 years after that, or maybe more than that. Maybe make it average $12 million over the course of 3 years. Does he come in and is everything fine? Possibly. So then their secondary would be in much better shape. But now it's like you got Kendall Fuller, Fabian Moreau might pan out, and then who else? Jimmy Moreland. He's good, but he's not Quentin Dunbar. Quentin Dunbar is a true number 1 corner.
Yeah, Dunbar was out. Remember, he got hurt against the Eagles in week 1, and then he was out week 2 against Dallas. And that was the game that Michael Gallup and Devin Smith went off. So we know what the Redskins secondary is going to look like without Dunbar. But yeah, maybe those young guys will step up. Who knows? All right. Question here from Spynick. First, Bill O'Brien gives away Hopkins to the Cardinals. Now Ron Rivera gifts a number 1 corner to Seattle, a collusion against my 49ers. Maybe Seattle's looking pretty good now. I agree with what you said about them. They have a number 1 corner now. I think this could put them over the hump to get deep into the playoffs. They had to address 2 things. Their secondary was one, although they got Quandre Diggs late in the year. That really helped, but they really needed cornerback help. Number 2 is the offensive line, which they haven't really touched yet, but maybe they will in the draft, although they really haven't done that. Steven S., when do you think the first XFL kicker would be picked up? McGinnis is solid. I'm biased for Matt McCrane. Matt McCrane should have a job. I agree. He was a good kicker, and McGinnis. I wasn't really following XFL kickers because they're extra point rules, so you almost never see them. But yeah, I mean, Steven Gostkowski was cut by the Patriots. Want to say something quickly about that?
Yeah, Gostkowski got released. He's the second longest tenured Patriot behind Tom Brady. So his reign as the longest tenured Patriot lasted 5 days. He's coming off an injury. The Patriots trying to just shed some salary, get younger at key positions. So they'll be looking for a new kicker. Maybe they'll go after McCrane or McGinnis. I know McCrane was in the NFL for a while and he kicked well, so I like him. Maybe they'll bring him in, and I have a feeling that the Patriots are going to draft a kicker. Like they love drafting specialists in like the mid rounds, so they could draft Rodrigo Blankenship from Georgia in like the 5th round with one of their million picks. But you know, if they're going to bring in a veteran, I'd like to see them bring in a younger guy like Matt McCrane. So yeah, Steven's bringing up his stats here: 2 NFL game winners, 5 games played, longest 100% field goal distance, and no kickoff penalties. That sounds pretty good to me. I think he deserves a shot. I'm not always too picky on my kickers, but I remember liking McCrane when he was in the league.
Yeah, I believe he was with the Steelers, and I think he hit the game winner. I think it was in 2018. He should be on a team. So let's get back to corners. So we talked about Dunbar. Darius Slay was also traded. So the Eagles acquired Darius Slay from the Lions for a 3rd and a 5th round pick. Slay, he's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. So what do you think about this trade?
Yeah, I think it was a solid one overall. I think the Eagles win it just because they had such a massive need at corner. And now they have a true number 1 corner. And their secondary should be in better shape for it. I know they got rid of Malcolm Jenkins, but they brought back Rodney McLeod. So they're in much better shape back there. I don't exactly understand why the Lions wanted to trade Slay. Like, this price is fine. Like, you're getting a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. If they had let him go in free agency, they probably would have recouped just the 3rd. So they're getting decent enough value. But in a win now year for Matt Patricia, I don't know why they would want to get rid of Slay. I know they signed Desmond Trufant to replace him, and I'm a big Trufant guy. I think he's really good when he's on the field. But why not have both of them while you're fighting for your job as opposed to just one of them? And then that would free you up. Instead of maybe having to draft Jeff Okudah, you could trade down and take Isaiah Simmons, someone you could use as a versatile chess piece, which I'm sure Patricia would love because of his time in New England. But I think that the trade for them was fine, but it wasn't anything impressive. But for the Eagles, it was like, pretty much a no-brainer. They filled one of their biggest needs without having to give up 1st or 2nd-round picks. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a great trade for the Eagles, I think. Obviously you don't know how some of these older players will play, and Slay's not 30 yet, so he shouldn't regress too much. I kind of have Nam the Asamoah in the back of my mind because I was just talking to my friend earlier today, and we're just talking about how that failed, and some of the other free agent signings that failed. But this should work out for the Eagles. Slay was great last year. He shadows number 1 corners, even if they go into the slot. I think a big factor in this move is that Darius Slay has a great track record against Amari Cooper. And that's a big deal because the Eagles and Cowboys are such bitter rivals. So that'll really help out a lot. And yeah, I'm with you. And I don't understand why the Lions are so eager to trade Slay. Like, they really need to win this year. I think they need to reach the playoffs, or at least have like a 9-7 record for Patricia to survive another year. So you would think that, having Slay and Desmond Trufant on the field at the same time would be very good. Like, that's going to be tough to throw against. So yeah, I don't really like this move too much for the Lions. I don't hate it. Like, a 3rd and a 5th, that's okay. Like, if they got a 2nd and a 5th, I could be like, I could really get behind that. 3rd and a 5th, it feels like they should have gotten a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, if they do have their eyes on Jeff Okudah, then this makes, I guess this makes a little bit more sense. But then again, like, to your point, you could take an Isaiah Simmons or a Derek Brown, and really strengthen something else and have 2 great corners. So yeah, I think the Eagles definitely win this trade.
Yeah, I think the Lions did a lot better in the Duron Harmon trade. You think they gave up like a 5th and got Duron Harmon and a 7th to play a role as a safety in the secondary. He should fit in very well there. Obviously, New England ties again. But yeah, it just didn't make sense to trade Slay. I mean, maybe Trufant does as well as Slay, but I know, like you said, Slay does really well against Amari Cooper, and Eagles Redskins is a rivalry in that division as well. And I know Terry McLaurin, I think, said that Slay was the toughest cornerback he went against last year. So that's another number 1 receiver that Slay has maybe not an advantage against, but definitely can cover well.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, this is another good point. What do you think? Why do you think the Patriots quickly? Do you know why the Patriots traded Harmon away for almost nothing?
I really don't exactly know why. I know they signed Adrian Phillips shortly thereafter to take over his role as kind of like the 3rd safety, versatile guy. But I didn't see the Duron Harmon trade coming. I think Belichick's just trying to get younger, trying to get some cheaper guys out there. I don't know exactly what Harmon was making, but I know they signed Phillips relatively cheap. So maybe he can take over a starting position from McCourty and Chung when they retire. And at the very least, he gives them a versatile piece. But I don't see the appeal of moving up to the 5th round from the 7th and giving up Duron Harmon. I'd rather just have really good depth in the secondary, because if the Patriots are going to win this year, it's going to be with their defense and running game. But Bill must know something, I'm assuming.
Do you think Bill is trying to lose for Lawrence?
No, I don't think Bill ever wants to lose. That would stun me if he tried to lose for Lawrence. Also, if Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback of the Patriots, I will be in my own personal hell, because I am an Alabama fan because they're the first college to accept me into their school. And my cousin goes to Clemson, so his part of the family is all Clemson fans, and I do not think I could deal with Trevor Lawrence being the guy for 20 years. It would drive me nuts.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's definitely a reason to like Alabama. Um, well, if Lawrence is your quarterback, I think you might be willing to forgive Clemson just for that one player. But
Yeah, no, I can forgive Clemson. That's not the problem. The problem is hearing about how he went to Clemson for 20 years is my assumption of what would happen. I mean, I love Trevor Lawrence as a player. He's really great. And, I think he's going to be a great pro. But, I don't know. I love Tua Tagovailoa too. And I would love to see him in a Patriots uniform. But I don't think that's going to happen. So anyway, that's my college football fandom because UMass is so bad at football.
maybe they won't get Lawrence, but maybe they'll get Justin Fields, and then you'll feel good about that. Like
that, I think that's a happy compromise. I can deal with that.
There you go. But I don't think the Patriots will be bad enough to get one of those two guys unless they suffer like a slew of injuries or something. I think the Patriots will be solid next year. They might even make the playoffs. Think about saying that the Patriots might even make the playoffs, but they, I guess it really depends on what they do at quarterback. We don't know the full picture yet. Like I imagine Belichick has a plan and we just don't know what it is yet. It's like reading Game of Thrones where some characters behind the scenes or they know what they're doing and they have a plan, but you don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like it seems right now, like Stidham's going to be the guy they want to see more of. But I think they're going to bring in competition for him via the draft. I know there was some rumor that they were interested in James Morgan from Florida International. I wouldn't be surprised if they're interested in Jake Fromm. That's a guy I really like. I just think he's so smart, intelligent, manages the game so well. He could fit very well into Patriots offense if they give him enough time. So I'd like to see him and Stidham compete for the job with Hoyer providing veteran depth. See what they do, though. It's going to be one of the most interesting New England off seasons in quite some time.
That's true. By the way, I heard some great things about Morgan. Like teams love this guy. Like he's a good leader. He's smart and he has pretty good arm. He did pretty well in the was it the East West Shrine game?
Yeah, it was the Shrine game.
Teams like him a lot. I'll just say that. So I have been in the 4th round of my mock draft, which I updated today. I can see him going 3rd round. He's pretty good. I like him. So, all right, let's get to some other trades. So speaking quarterbacks, Nick Foles. It seemed like the Jaguars were going to get stuck with his contract, but they found a taker. They found there's a sucker born every day, apparently, and the sucker is the Bears, and the Bears gave up a 4th round pick for Nick Foles. So thoughts on this trade?
So I actually really like Nick Foles as a player, like more than most people. I've always liked his skill set. I liked him when he was at Arizona, but I have no idea why the Bears felt the need to give up a 4th round draft pick to get him. I mean, his contract is terrible, and I get that the Jaguars are eating a lot of dead money there. Like there's money that the Bears aren't going to have to deal with, but they're overpaying a quarterback who has not proven to be successful outside of Philadelphia. And the Frank Reich system and all the systems that he dealt with at that time. So I'm just not convinced he's going to be the answer in Chicago. I could see it happening, but for the cost of a 4th round pick for that type of contract, I thought that the Jaguars made out like bandits because I really thought that they were just going to have to do a salary dump type trade or, maybe take like a 7th for Foles or a late round swap. And they managed to get a 4th round pick. As for the Bears, I think this is another classic example of them outbidding themselves for the services of a quarterback. We saw this when the front office signed Mike Glennon, $15 million a year for 3 years. No other team was thinking about doing that. Then we had them trading up one spot to take Mitchell Trubisky. It didn't seem like another team was going to trade up that high in that draft, and now they're trading a 4th for Nick Foles when it really didn't seem like there was any team willing to trade for him. So I don't know. This is just a thing that the Bears seem to do with quarterbacks.
Yeah, the team that passed on Watson and Mahomes and traded up for Trubisky did not work out pretty well for them. We talked about Foles briefly last week because we heard some rumors that the Patriots were interested and turned out to be bogus. But we talked about how a trade might go down between the Jaguars and the Patriots, and it seemed like we both agreed that the Jaguars would have to give up a pick to move Foles because of how bad his contract was. And so when I heard this announced and a 4th round pick was involved, I'm like, oh, the Jaguars got a 4th or the Bears got a fourth to take Foles' contract. I'm like, I guess that makes sense. And then I realized, no, the Bears surrendered a fourth for Foles. And it's like, well, why? It doesn't make any sense. Like, Cam Newton's available. Just sign Cam Newton. Or Jameis Winston's available. Sign Jameis Winston. Obviously, Foles has the compared to Winston, he has obviously more playoff experience and yeah, he has the Super Bowl win, whereas Newton went to the Super Bowl and didn't win. But Newton is more talented than Foles. Like, come on, like we can all agree on that. Winston, I think you can make the case. I think I'd rather have Foles than Winston if their money is even. But you could pay Winston less money than Foles. So like that's the key there. So I mean, this is just a bad trade for the Bears. But I guess the one caveat is that he's better than Mitchell Trubisky, like definitely. So even though this is a bad trade and they have to take a bad contract and they gave up a pick unnecessarily, they're getting an upgraded quarterback, which is substantial. And we know that Foles can win a Super Bowl if he has a great roster around him. So the question is, do the Bears have a great roster? Like I still like their defense. It's not as good as it was a couple years ago because they don't have Bryce Callahan. But I think the big thing is that their offensive line is not as good. Kyle Long retired. Their two tackles were way worse last year than they were in 2018, Charles Leno and Bobby Massey. So that's a big factor. So like part of the problem for Foles last year in Jacksonville, besides his collarbone injury, was that the Jaguars offensive line was horrible, and he's going to have the same issue in Chicago. So I really don't see things working out for the Bears here.
Yeah, unless they can add offensive line help and they don't have a first round pick, so that like they're not going to land any of the top guys. I know it's a pretty deep tackle class here, and maybe Leno and Bobby Massey will bounce back, but you can't rely on that at this point. I'm definitely worried about the Bears offensive line. I do like the rest of their team as a whole. I think they can be competitive if they have a good quarterback, but Foles just isn't very mobile. And, now he's dealing with a collarbone injury. I know that's healed and he has since played, but those injuries can come back at times. So that's definitely worth watching while he's in Chicago, but that's going to be fascinating to see how he does there.
Yeah, it will be. I guess they needed an excuse to move on from Trubisky, and getting a Super Bowl MVP is that excuse, I guess, because it would have looked bad for Ryan Pace if he just gave up on Trubisky after 3 years. But just based on how bad Trubisky was, especially with the worst offensive line last year, he regressed, and he's just not good enough to make up for it. I mean, they lost in the first round with a good offensive line and a legendary defense. Maybe not legendary, but a great defense. They couldn't get past the first round. I know they had missed the field goal, but they were losing late in the game. And if they had a better quarterback, they would have beaten the Eagles pretty easily. So, all right. So we have some signings to get to. First question here from Nick. Have you heard the revived trade rumors of Odell Beckham to the 49ers? I have not heard this. Have you?
I have not heard those either. I still can't imagine Cleveland moving on from Odell, but you never know.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either. I don't know why John Lynch would trade for Odell, like based on what happened last year. Like if you get him cheaply, then sure, but I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense. The Browns would have to surrender him for a below market value. So I don't know why they do that, but I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. All right. So a couple of key free agent signings. So the Falcons signed Todd Gurley, 1 year, $5 million. So what do you think about this move?
I think it's a great move for the Falcons. It's a very high upside move, and it's low risk. It's 1 year, $5 million. Like you said, I know Gurley has knee problems. The degenerative arthritis or arthritic knees, I believe, is what the official term is on them. But, it's not like he's that far removed from being a big game changer. The Rams were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, largely thanks to their running game. I know CJ Anderson stepped in late in the year and was a key part of that. But for the Falcons, they're not going to, make him a true workhorse like he was that year. Gurley, that is. Like, they will mix in Brian Hill, who looked good at times last year. And I think Ito Smith is the other back on their team who could see some action. So they really have like a solid running back rotation that could benefit from having Gurley. And if Gurley can get like 10 to 15 touches a game and, load management for the knees as needed, he could still be an impactful role player there. So I like this. They're basically just taking a chance on him. And if it doesn't pan out, they can give Brian Hill and Ito Smith a chance to carry out the bulk of the load in the backfield.
Yeah, I think it's an upgrade over Devontae Freeman. Definitely. I mean, obviously, I think Freeman can handle more of a workload based on Gurley's knees. But Freeman wasn't doing that well anyway. Like, he was kind of an overrated player, I think, to begin with. He would always wear down late in the year. He had some great games for sure, but I don't think he was as good as people thought he was. And I think we saw it last year. He only averaged 3.6 yards per carry or something. And I'm not like Kenny, like, if he's still listening, and I think he's going to comment on the YPC because he hates that stat. But I do think that I don't think that stat's indicative of how players play, but I do think that was the case for Freeman. He just didn't have explosion anymore. And his offensive line, like, while it wasn't as good as it should have been, it was not terrible either. But the Rams offensive line last year was terrible. They lost a couple starters to free agency. Andrew Whitworth took a step backward. So Gurley, on top of his knees, he didn't have the blocking. I think he's going to have a better blocking in Atlanta. And the Falcons, based on the contract, like 1 year, $5 million, they know he's not going to handle the full workload. So I think as like a good role player in Atlanta, I think it makes a lot of sense. He could plunge into the end zone a lot. The Falcons historically have had problems in the red zone. So I think Gurley could definitely help in that regard. So I love the signing. There's no risk really. I mean, the only risk they take on is if they can't roll the $5 million over into next offseason. But the salary cap is going to go way up next offseason. So there's not really any sort of risk. So I love this move for Atlanta.
Yeah, definitely. And another aspect of it that I love, along with the Laquan Treadwell signing, it's possible that the Falcons, if everyone is healthy, will be able to start 11 first-round picks on offense, which is just absolute insanity. No team has ever done that before. So that would be kind of cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a wild stat I saw. Like, they're going to have 10 first-round pick starters on offense in all likelihood. Between the offensive line, quarterback, 2 receivers, Gurley, and whoever their tight end is. I think it's Hayden Hearst now. But then it's like, all right, if they play a third receiver and it's Laquan Treadwell, that's 11 first-round picks. Of course, they may just be like, we're going to put the fullback out there. But, they could have some fun and just be like the only team to ever do that, probably at least for a while.
That's amazing. That is a cool stat. And yeah, I'm like running through the players. I'm like, yeah, first round. Yeah. Not all of them panned out. Like Hayden Hearst, obviously, like we didn't really discuss him. I don't think it's worth discussing. He just he didn't do that well in Baltimore. He was outplayed by Mark Andrews. But I'd say with him, like, it's weird. It's like, I want to say he has upside because he hasn't been in the league that long, but he's closer to 30 than people realize because he was so old entering the NFL. So it's like, he doesn't really have that much upside. So, I think that's okay. But like, yeah, some of them haven't worked out, but some of them have. And I kind of like Atlanta this year. They finished 6-2 late in the year. And now they're going to be better with Gurley. So I'm kind of bullish on their chances.
Yeah, I think I was maybe 1 year too early to the Atlanta party, unfortunately. But I definitely like them better this year, especially if their offensive line improves, because that was a big issue last year.
Yeah, and I know about being 1 year too early because I bet the Chiefs at 40-1 in 2018 to win the Super Bowl. And it looked great. And then they lost the coin flip in overtime to the Patriots, and they lost in the AFC Championship. And actually, my father-in-law bet them too. And so he was like dying. And then they won the year after, and he was so upset. Like, so I was like, it just sucks. It was just bad luck. But yeah, I definitely know all about that. All right, the other major running back to sign, Melvin Gordon signed with Denver, 2 years, $16 million, $13.5 million guaranteed. So what are your thoughts on this one?
So first of all, when I first saw this trade, or this signing rather, I misread it and I thought it said that Melvin Gordon was joining the Browns. And I was like, I'm going to lose my mind if this is true. Because I was like, I'm not dealing with Nick Chubb, Melvin Gordon, and Kareem Hunt in fantasy. Then I went back and read, and I was like, okay, it says Broncos. Okay, we're good now. But I was surprised that he signed with the Broncos just because I didn't think they'd be looking for a running back, because Philip Lindsay's been pretty good as their starter the past couple years. And they have Royce Freeman, who was a third-round pick in 2018, and he hasn't been really good as a backup, but he's been, serviceable. But, they got Gordon at, I think, $8 million a year for 2 years, so they're not taking much of a risk. Pairing him with Lindsay should work out well. And, Gordon's coming off of a down year, but the year before he averaged I want to say above 5 yards per carry, maybe even 5.6 or something ridiculous like that. So if he has better offensive line play with the Broncos, which he should if they're all healthy and if they, find a way to upgrade Garrett Bowles at left tackle, just in terms of penalties, he's pretty bad. I think Gordon could play well. And I think it works best to keep him in a rotation. We saw it with Austin Eckler when both of them were getting reps. It really helped Eckler more than Gordon last year, but Gordon was out of shape from holding out. But I think this could really be a big upgrade for Lindsay because he's not going to have to take as many hits because they'll be splitting the load pretty evenly. And both backs can do a little bit of everything. So I think Denver is set up well to have a run-based offense that will allow Drew Lock to kind of ease on into that starting role, which I think he could very easily do well in.
Yeah, I think that it makes a lot of sense. From that perspective, getting Drew Lock more help offensively, easing the pressure off of him. I think that from that perspective, I think this is a very good signing. I was told that Denver wanted a running back this offseason. I assumed that they were going to draft someone in the third or fourth round because maybe they didn't like Freeman that much. But then they went and signed Melvin Gordon. But when I heard that Gordon signed with the Broncos, I was ready to give this a bad grade because I assumed that Gordon was going to get the money that he wanted to, kind of like Le'Veon Bell type money, maybe a little bit less. But then I heard there was only 2 years, $16 million. That's less than Robbie Anderson got. It's just kind of crazy if you think about it. And I like Anderson. He's a fine number 2 receiver, but Gordon is a lot better than Anderson as an overall player. So this is a great deal for Denver, bargain wise. So I really like this move. I'm not crazy about the fit just from a fantasy perspective because I like Philip Lindsay. I like him as a player. He's exciting to watch. Now he's going to carry, or he's going to have 10 to 12 touches per game, overall touches. I would assume. And Melvin Gordon is going to carry 15 to 20 times per game. So they're going to be able to keep Gordon fresh, which is nice. But from a fantasy perspective, I don't like it. Overall, though, I think it's a solid move. Not super crazy about it, but I think it's worth a B, maybe a B plus.
Yeah, I think I agree with the grading there. It wasn't a massive need. But I'm kind of envisioning more of an even split than you are. Maybe just because of how Gordon looked last year comparatively. But you never know how things are going to shake out, especially with running backs. They get banged up so easily. So I think it's better for the Broncos to have depth. And who knows, maybe Lindsay could play a little bit out at receiver, or Gordon could play out in the slot a little bit because the Broncos don't have a ton of receiving weapons. I know we're assuming they'll draft one in the first round this fall or this April. I'm all screwed up with my time today, apparently. But I think that seeing how they divvy up the carries is going to be something to watch, especially from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, it's hard to be good about time because we haven't been outside in a long time, so we kind of don't know what's going on. I think that's fair. I maybe you're right. Maybe they will split it more 50-50. I assume there was going to be 65-35 Gordon. But maybe they do have last year in mind. Although I think last year Gordon was just not in shape. I think he reported out of shape to the Chargers. And we've seen that a lot from running backs who, kind of stay away from teams because of holdouts, and then they report, and then they're not 100%. Like Ezekiel Elliott just is an exception. He was kind of great right away. But we've seen players like that just kind of be out of shape and just not quite themselves. So I think we'll see a better Gordon this year. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of disappointing a little bit just to see where he ended up. I was kind of hoping for like Miami or something because while they don't have a good offensive line yet, but they will eventually. And I thought that would have been a good move. But all right, another signing. This is also 2 years for $16 million. The Saints signed Emanuel Sanders. So what are your thoughts on this one?
I absolutely love this fit. I think Sanders is like the number 2 receiver the Saints have been missing for quite some time. He's such a great route runner, but he's got really good speed. He's going to be further removed from, I think it was either an Achilles or an ACL. I think it was an Achilles though. And he's definitely going to take some pressure off Michael Thomas. That Saints offense now looks explosive because you've got Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray in the backfield, Drew Brees throwing the ball to Michael Thomas and Sanders. And then you got Jared Cook at tight end, and Taysom Hill can play probably every position on offense that isn't the offensive line. So it just adds another dimension. But I think one of the big things last year, Thomas caught a ton of passes, but down the stretch of the season, I don't want to say he wore down because he was still catching a lot of passes, but almost too much of the responsibility fell on him to move the chains. And we saw that in their early exit to the Minnesota Vikings. I know Breeze didn't have his best game then either, but he was throwing mostly to Michael Thomas. So I think Sanders gives them that true number 2 they've been lacking. And it's on a 2-year, $16 million deal. There's no risk. I know Sanders is, I think, 33. But, having him under contract for 2 years, even if he regresses, that's not going to crush the team long term.
Yeah, I mean, they've been looking for a second receiver for a while. Like they signed Des Bryant a couple years ago, and he got hurt right away, so that didn't work out. Like maybe it would have if he stayed healthy. But yeah, they've had Ted Ginn as their number 2. They tried Tre Quan Smith. He always disappoints, except for when he caught that record touchdown, or it was the record. I forget, was it touchdown or is it just yardage? It
was a touchdown. It looked very, very bad because the Redskins had 20 yards of space, and then they gave Breeze a paper certificate. It was a weird moment. It was pretty interesting. It
was the Monday night game against the Redskins. So that was his one bright moment. But Tre Quan Smith he catches a touchdown every 4 weeks. And people are like, oh, he's good. Let me start him in DraftKings. And then he just sucks after that. He's just not a good receiver. So, yeah, I like this move a lot. Even though Sanders is 33, I still think he can play well. Just based on his skill set, his route running is great. And usually the receivers who last into their mid to late 30s are the best route runners. I don't want to compare anyone to Jerry Rice, but Jerry Rice played till he was 41. Just because he's the best route runner of all time. So it just goes to show that, Anquan Bolden is another one who's a great route runner. He played into his mid to late 30s. So yeah, it just goes to show if you can run routes extremely well, you can get open. That's what Sanders can do. And it'll be easier to get open with Michael Thomas commanding so much attention. And Drew Brees can deliver the ball. So I love this move. And I also don't think it precludes the Saints from drafting a receiver at was 24. I still think they can take a receiver. Actually, in my mock draft, I have them taking Laviska Shenault, I believe. So I still think that's an option for them.
Yeah, definitely. This isn't going to stop them from doing that because they can bring in someone to be the third receiver, learn from Thomas and Sanders, and develop them. So I definitely like that fit. And Chenault's a guy I like. I like Denzel Mims a lot. I don't know if he's going to ultimately go in the first round, but I could see the Saints having an interest in him and playing Sanders a bit more in the slot or interchangeably, however they see fit. But the Saints have a lot of options. They have a team that's very ready to win now. They just got to plug up a few holes, add some depth, and they should be in good shape.
Yeah, and Steven says, Larry Fitzgerald is another one who could play. He could play probably another 2, 3, maybe 4 years. He's not the same explosive receiver he once was, but his route running allows him to still be a solid starting receiver. So yeah, that's definitely another example. Denzel Mims makes sense as well. Maybe Jalen Reagor if they want to replace Ted Ginn's deep ability. And we have one more question. Which quarterback from the draft will have the most successful NFL career?
I'm gonna see if Tua was healthy. I probably would pick him over Joe Burrow. No. That's my biggest regret of this draft is that Tua didn't stay healthy, because the Burrow or Tua debate would have been really cool to see. But Tua is making the recovery now, and he seems to be throwing well. I'm going to go with Tua being the most successful NFL quarterback to come out of this class. I think it's going to take some time for Burrow to adjust at the NFL level. I think he's going to still be a great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he was kind of a one-year wonder in college, and leaving that system and going to the Bengals, even with a good quarterback coach like Zach Taylor, I think it's going to take him some time to adjust. I could be wrong here, but I'll go Tua.
Okay, yeah, that the Tua Burrow debate would have been amazing. It would have reminded me of the Manning Leaf debates. I remember that very clearly. It was the year before I started the website, and so like I didn't get to cover that, unfortunately, but it was something that people were highly debating, and looking back on it, obviously there was one clear choice. Now I wonder if like 15, 20 years from now, we're looking back, or even like 5 years, we're looking back and like duh, like you should have taken Burrow or Tua. I don't know if it'd be like that, because I actually like both guys. And I'm with you. I think if Tua were healthy and never suffered that injury, I would say Tua would have the better career. But with his injury, I think he'll recover, but we don't know if he's ever going to be 100% again. I hope he will be, but we don't know that. So I'll go the safe route and go with Burrow, just to, I guess, to be different here. But it's like 51-49 for me.
Yeah, totally fair. I completely get that. And just to point out on the Leaf Peyton debate, I don't remember that. I was like 2 years and a month old when that draft happened, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
I may look older than I am, but this definitely would be a similar Manning Leaf situation. I love that comparison, but I think that these guys are cleaner off the field for sure.
I feel very old now. I was 15 and a half when in the 98 draft when that happened. I was my birthday's in August, so I was like 4 months away from being 16. So yeah, but yeah, I remember that was like is really when I really started getting into the NFL. And that was the first NFL draft I followed very closely. It was the 98 draft. And there was so much intrigue with the two quarterbacks. I remember not having like a super strong opinion on it because, like I was still young. I didn't know that much. It seemed like Manning was the better one. But I remember Leaf just having a huge arm and everything. So I remember not thinking I remember not having a clear opinion on it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think of a similar draft. I mean, the one that I remember where there was a lot of quarterbacks and quarterback drama were 04 with, Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, but Manning not wanting to go to the Chargers, all that good stuff. And then 05 when Aaron Rodgers just kept falling and falling and falling. Like those are the two first drafts that I remember really clearly, because that's when they still had the green room and all that good stuff. So, looking back, it's like, yeah, we kind of screwed up on the Aaron Rodgers thing. And then the 04 draft, I kind of think, Phillip Rivers is the only one who got screwed in that circumstance because he didn't win a Super Bowl yet. But we'll see. Maybe he can do it with the Colts.
Maybe, yeah. Rivers, I feel like if he went to the Giants would have won at least 2, maybe 3, because they were great in 2012. They just lost right away in the playoffs. Eli Manning was not that good. But yeah, that's I think the 05 one is another good example with Rodgers and Alex Smith, except I don't envision like the other one dropping below number 5, unlike the 05 draft. And I like vividly remember doing a mock draft the night before, and I had Aaron Rodgers going to the Niners in number 1. And there's like a report. It wasn't Schefter back then because I don't even know if he was an NFL Network. But like maybe it was like Chris Mortensen. He reported that the Niners liked Smith more. And I remember being confused. I'm like, really? I liked Rodgers just watching him more at Cal than Alex Smith. So yeah, I changed my mock draft at like the last second and I put Alex Smith at number 1. Did not work out well for the 49ers, unfortunately. All right. So a couple other comments. I say whoever's the 6th quarterback taken will be the best in the GOAT in the years to come. Who would have thought Brady at the time? Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Brady going pick 199 is just insane. Like, really.
Yeah, no, it is. And if this is the 6th quarterback taken, that's probably going to be either Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason. So if this is true, if Steven, if you have predicted this properly, I hope it's Jake Fromm going sixth among quarterbacks, because I'm a big fan and it would do me well to see him succeed.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be James Morgan, and then we'll look pretty good right now. We'll have this video up a couple years from now. We can clip it. Last question: if the season is delayed, it won't matter as much if Tua misses time. Could this cause the Bengals to at least consider him at number one? I don't think it will. I think the Bengals are locked into Burrow. But it's a good point. If the season is delayed, then maybe Tua can play as a rookie. But I think the consensus really is. And I saw that Lee Steinberg, Tua's agent, I think he tweeted saying that he believes that rookie quarterbacks should sit their first year, because obviously his top client is Patrick Mahomes, and he knows all about sitting the first year. So Mahomes played one game to close out the year, his rookie year. So maybe Tua plays down the stretch, like couple of games. But I don't even think his agent wants him to play his rookie year. So, but that's a good point though.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good point. I do think that the Bengals are locked into Burrow as well. Just at this point, like we talked about, he's the safer option, even though Tua may end up having a great NFL career as well. I think, like, you know, if there was like definitive, like, yeah, this season is absolutely not going to happen, or it's absolutely going to be delayed, and this was a few months ago and we knew this, then maybe they would have really considered both options. But I think at this point, Burrow's probably their guy.
Yeah, I think he is. All right, that's it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, we've got a ton of Tom Brady coverage over at NBC Sports Boston. I've written several stories that I shared on my Twitter account, just about, you know, stuff surrounding his exit and all the good stuff that you'd want to know. Also, one of my colleagues wrote a column about what it would be like if Deshaun Watson ends up being the Patriots quarterback. I don't know if you saw that, but like, apparently he was the betting odds favorite to be the Patriots quarterback week 1 in 2021, which is, I don't know.
Maybe they listened to our show last week when I joked about them trading for Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, they might have. For all I know, that's where they come up with this. But that's like an entertaining piece of just like, what if this happens? Like, yeah, probably if they have the opportunity to do this, they should. He calls the Texans idiots in it. So check that out. And I'm on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. Feel free to follow me. I intermittently tweet my thoughts about the NFL, and I'm always happy to answer questions if you have them. So hit me up. I'll be tweeting a lot more during draft month for sure.
Sounds good. I want to see that Watson thing tonight. I'm gonna definitely read it. I did see that he was the betting favorite. We actually, Kenny and I talked about it on the podcast briefly yesterday. I don't understand, but maybe Bill O'Brien likes Rex Burkhead a lot and wants Rex Burkhead. We'll see. Pair him with David Johnson. That's a winning formula, I think. All right, I'm at walterfootball.com. Updated mock draft today. 6 rounds. We're going to do a 7th soon, probably next week. But yeah, it's updated for free agency, and we have tons of NFL draft content to check out. Power rankings as well, which I'll update soon as well. So yeah, I guess I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.